Welcome back, everybody, to the ATL Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Shepard. I'm joined this week by Max McKenna. He's a longtime friend of the podcast, longtime friend of me and Coach Giordano, way back to our Oglethorpe days. Max has been with Headfirst Camp Company for 14 years, and we have been relying on them when we were at college to recruit athletes that went to their camps. For the whole duration that I was there, and ever since then we have been pushing our players to the Headfirst camps. And I do have a little surprise today. I asked some of our players that are currently in college to take a video and send it in on why Headfirst was important for them, and we'll play that for Max a little bit later, but I think he'll get a little bit of enjoyment out of that. And for anybody that went and listened to our podcast where we had our former athletes on, our current college players, all of them had spoken highly of Headfirst and how important it was, and how they basically wish that they had listened a little bit sooner in the messaging for that. So they had went, and we have quite a few players in our 2024 class that will be graduating this year that have attended Headfirst camps and will be going off to play college. So, with a little long-winded intro, but I felt like I needed to give a good background for Max and a good hype train for him, because some listeners may be saying, "Why is this guy on? You know, what is this beard? We're not used to seeing another beard across the screen that looks half as good as Coach Shep's." But Max is one of the most knowledgeable guys in the scene when it comes to not just promoting for Headfirst and their brand. He really does care about the student athlete and the families, and he's seen it all. So I wanted to bring him on today, and we wanted to continue to be diverse with who we bring on for these podcasts, and hopefully get you guys knowledge out. So, Max, after a 2-minute and 42-second intro, please tell the people a little bit about yourself and your journey to Headfirst and into the space.
Absolutely, Shep. Thank you so much for that incredibly kind intro. I love it. We'll see if I can do the beard justice. So as Coach Shepard mentioned, longtime friend of Shep and Gio, back from the Oglethorpe days, and have been in the Headfirst sphere since I started there as an intern between my junior and senior year of college. Personally, I played my college baseball at Amherst College up here in Massachusetts. After that, went into teaching and coaching for a few years at the high school level, first at Phillips Academy in Andover, and then at a small private school outside New York City called the Masters School. After that, went back full-time to Headfirst in 2014. And I've been working closely ever since then, really, especially with the showcase camps, and especially, honestly, and the reason that I feel comfortable here is with families and student athletes, and kind of helping guide them through the recruiting process, specifically at some of these, selective schools, some of these schools that you might term high academic, and kind of the relationship between marrying the baseball side of things and the academic side of things as players look at what they want to do in college, and really kind of optimize and maximize both those outcomes for themselves. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
This was one of the quickest ones that came together. I've thought since the beginning that we probably would go down this path and have you guys on at some point. I did want to wait a little bit. I didn't want people to think that we were just having you on to, to sell something, because I do very much so push Headfirst down their throats, and it starts at an early age. And sometimes it's like, well, I don't know. Like it's a little late. In the summer, it's a little late in the process. We started high school football. But I always said, look, mark these dates down. This is a camp you have to go to. You guys run. We'll get into what you guys run and why I think it's worth the money and worth the experience you get. But Max, let me ask you to start, I guess. What's the most common question that you get from parents? And it may be very, very simple, it may be complex, but what do you get the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the questions that we get are in kind of two veins. One of them is, how do I know what I'm looking for? How do I know where I fit in this process? I think that um, there's a lot of folks who are like, I'm a 2025, I'm throwing 81 to 83. I'm like, where do I fit into this process? And I think I see that on the field, but then also academically as well. A lot of kids have great GPA, decent test scores, and they're kind of thinking about, how do these two things shake out for me, and where do I fit in this laddering of college baseball, and also on the academic side as well. Like, where can I optimize this for myself? And
Hmm.
I think that there's some angst around that for a lot of families, just kind of trying to get an honest assessment of, where do I fall? What is a realistic ceiling for me? And then also, how do I accomplish and how do I reach for that ceiling, right? Because potential is a pretty dangerous word. If it could be something that's left on the table. But I think that a lot of families are looking for, where do I fit in this process, which is also what I think I personally appreciate what you and Geo do with your players, is kind of talk them talk them through that to some degree, and are able to say, like, here's what we've seen, and here's where our experience lies.
I totally understand why families have like that stress. Because with recruiting, I mean, it used to be Division Ones were going to be freshman, sophomore year, but with the rule changes, they're pushed back even more now to the junior year. But like D3s and D2s really start building their list maybe the summer going into your junior year, but really the very few of them are, and they're gonna start compiling a list really during their season. They're really gonna like attack that list during their season and that summer when the player is going to be a senior, which is extremely late. And most of the time, a lot of the kids' friends, they know where they're going to college. They know, I want to go to Georgia, and they're like, "Where are you gonna go?" And it's like, "I want to go play baseball." So it's almost like, you know, one of the like they need to have. One of the questions we get a lot is, how do I know what level I should play at? And I mean, I'll let you go ahead and answer that because I've said it multiple times, and we'll see if your answer is the same as mine. But like, how does a kid know where they should be looking?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the first thing around the timing, I couldn't agree more. I think that especially at some of these schools that are more selective on the academic front, their timing has to move a little bit later. And I know that the student athletes that come through our camps who are targeting these sorts of schools, schools in the Centennial Conference, schools in the SCIAC, schools that are in the Ivy or NESCAC, like, it's later than they want it to be, right? They're really heavying up on recruiting. The D3s are really heavying up on recruiting the summer leading into that application season. And even for a lot of these, incredibly high academic D1s, if you look at, the Yales of the world, they move a little bit earlier, but they still need to be able to go through their admissions to walk in with a recruiting class. They need a more robust academic info. If they walk into the admissions office and say, "Hey, this kid throws 95, let's let him in," the admissions department isn't going to say, "Oh, okay." They're going to say, "Yeah, what does his transcript look like? What are his test scores? What are the academic pieces of the puzzle?" And so they need a more robust folder to be able to bring in. And so that's a piece of why it moves late, or moves later, for some of these schools that are more selective. But it does absolutely contribute to that anxiety, because these families, they're seeing the perfect game commitment portal. They're seeing their friends. They're hearing about people at travel ball tournaments who are, committing to these Power Five schools, or, to these SEC schools and whatnot. And it's earlier for them. And so there is a sense that you're feeling behind at a lot of these programs that have to move later. But that is the reality of the recruiting process at these schools, just because they need more info to be able to feel comfortable walking your profile across campus to admissions. What I always say about trying to assess your fit at the next level. And baseball wise, where do I fall? Where do I belong? There's a number of things you can do. I think there's two that I highly recommend. One, and this is if you're in a program like the Lightning, then I think it's a lot easier. Like, have a trusted source who knows what they're talking about and get an honest assessment. Talk with them and say, hey, Shep, where do you see me playing? What in your years in college baseball across the ladders of college baseball, the different levels, where do you think I shake out? And going hand in hand with that is not just asking that question, but also being open to what is said. And it might not be something that you necessarily want to hear, but I think that for you to realistically set your expectations as a player, you need to be open to that feedback that you get. And it might be, here's what I think your ceiling is. I think you're a mid-major D1, but right now there's a gap for you to get there. And here are the things you need to work on to be able to, capitalize on that projectability. Or it might be, hey, I think that you're a kid who's going to have a really great D3 career. And again, that might not be what you want to hear. I think that a lot of kids have this D1 or bust type mindset. But I think that getting that honest assessment is super, super important. And then also keeping in mind, you're looking for the right overall holistic fit. So if they say, that D1 or bust mindset isn't always the best because you could go to a D1 school and get no playing time, or from a school personality wise, from the location, the majors, the academics, and the baseball side of it, it might not be the right fit. And if you look at the, transfer portal, you see that a huge number of folks are transferring out of schools into other schools because of lack of fit, lack of playing time, lack of expectations matching up with reality. The other thing that I always say to families and players to get a sense of where they should fall, and this is a lot harder for a 16, 17-year-old student athlete to do, but when you're at a tournament, you're at a showcase, when you're at a school camp, assess yourself, in relation to the other kids that are there. If you see a kid and you're like, oh, I just played against that travel ball team and I saw that shortstop is, committed to Georgia. How do I stack up against the Georgia kid? How do I stack up against the William and Mary kid? How do I stack up against the Haverford kid? Kind of getting a sense of, and having conversations again with the coaches around you and with trusted folks around you to say, here's where I think I line up. Is that realistic? If I'm looking at the guy across the diamond in the other dugout and I know where he's headed, or I know where he's projected, or I'm hearing rumors about him, some of them may or may not be true, but also kind of being able to assess yourself in the context of the competition that you're facing as well.
I think that's the hardest. I mean, it's easy when a kid is like head and shoulders better than you, but it's really hard when you see a kid and you're like, I'm better than that kid. Why is he getting looks here? And I always tell kids, like, every college coach is different on what they're looking for and what they've been evaluating kids a lot longer than you. So they probably are going to be better at it than you. But also, if you're playing against that kid 15 or 20 times, and you've probably seen him more than the college coach, so maybe he saw him on the right day. Like, you can't, and I mean, this is the only rule I ever have with my team when I coach them. I tell them all the time, like, I have one rule: control what you can control. If you do that, then we'll never have an issue. 100%. Attitude, effort.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. You can't control what a college coach is recruiting or looking for, who recruits. Like, you can only go out and make yourself better. And it's so interesting how you worded, you're going to, you might be a mid-major D1, or you might go have the best D3 college career, or you're going to be a great D3 player, because that example literally just happened in our org, where I won't say any names, but everyone's going to know who it is. 2 years ago, I remember I passed along one of our guys to mid-major D1, and for a year, and they were, before the rules changed, like, they were like, oh, it's great, like, love the metrics, love everything, he's athletic, like, it was back and forth, and then it just didn't do it in a game enough for them, and it was one of those where it was like, hey, we're going to just follow you. Basically, like, you have bumped down to like third on our list. And I remember talking to the kid's dad, was like, I think he's got the talent to be mid-major D1. I think like his metrics are there, but like, I don't want to put any more pressure on the kid, but I also don't want to lie to him. So like, he's got to do it in a game. But here's the thing: if he wants to go play college baseball, he's going to be one of the best D3 players in the country when it's all said and done. Or someone's going to like him, but like, we're getting a little late for that. Kid just ended up committing to another D1 school, but had you asked me a month ago before he started talking to them, well, I mean, he was like kind of like in the very beginning talks, but it was like everything I got from him was like they didn't seem all that interested yet, and I was like, I would have put money that he would have went to a Headfirst camp, and he would have been one of the best players there, and a D3 would have signed him, and he would have went on to have a great career. But he signed D1, and that's just one of the instances where like I know he's got the talent, but it's got to be the right day, the right time, in front of the right coach. And again, if I had to bet on it, I would have been wrong after the talks fell through with the one mid major. But that's the whole thing is like, I think an open line of communication, the relationship with the families, the trust, all that matters. And I know that we know our stuff, and we've been around many, many, many camps. We have many relationships with college coaches, but it's a little nerve-wracking for a parent to be like, all right, Mike Shep says this, like, let's just just trust him.
He knows what he's talking about. Let's do it.
It's tough, you know what I mean? And we get like, I guess I'll just transition this right into the recruiting services, and not just specifically a service, more like a recruiting guy. Mm-hmm. Like where our families are going and paying money to an individual that will, let's say 7,000 followers on Twitter, and he's giving them guidance, and he's reposting their videos, and he's emailing his list of coaches. What are your thoughts on that, on that whole? Because that's different than just signing up for a recruiting service, essentially putting your name in a database on like an NCSA. So like, how do you feel about any of those two things, I would say?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, so we work close. The first person to hire me as an intern at Headfirst helped, like his thing now that he runs his own shop now called Diamond College Advisory Team. And that's what he does, is like he shepherds people through the recruiting process, specifically for baseball and softball. Nice. And specifically, I got you. And then specifically across these sorts of more selective schools. Personally, I think that he does it in a really thoughtful way. He's also an Amherst alum, which helps. But the thing, I think that the caution that I have against, as you're assessing that, is the first thing you need to make sure is that the student athlete is the driver of their own recruiting process, right? So if you're outsourcing some of your recruiting, I think that there's a lot of expertise out there to be able to call upon, and having someone like an advisor to help you through the process can certainly be useful. If they say, don't worry about it, I'm going to push this out to my audience, I'm going to get you recruited, that's where I get very wary, because I think that the most important thing is that the student athlete find the right fit, and be able to do that, they need to understand that they're the driver in their process. They have to be in the driver's seat. It can't be mom and dad. It can't be Uncle Ben. It can't be this recruiting service. It can't even be Shep and Geo. Like, it needs to be the player who's optimizing what they're looking for at the next level. And I think that some of these recruiting services get in the way of that to some degree, because it lets you take your foot off the gas and think, well, I have somebody else out there who's looking out for me. And it lets you become a little too lax in holding yourself accountable. And so that's the main caution that I would have, is it has to be student athlete driving the process. Then there are plenty of good people out there who have a lot of experience going through the recruiting process from all sides of it. And yeah, calling upon their knowledge, if you have it available, I think totally makes sense. One thing that I say a lot to families is like, the recruiting process is not, you go through it once, right? As a student athlete, you're going through the recruiting process once. by definition, it's the student athlete's first time through that process. You have one rep. For parents, even if they have a kid who's been through the exact same recruiting process a couple years earlier, it changes year over year. It changes from school to school. It changes totally from kid to kid based on their baseball projectability, based on their academics, based on what it is they want. So it's not easy. It's almost impossible, I think, for families and for student athletes to get reps going through the recruiting process, to get practice, right? You only do it once, and the only time you do it, it feels like an incredibly high amount of pressure on the outcome of this single thing. So yeah, I think that like calling upon the resources who have been through this process recently with the sorts of schools that you're looking at, and with student athletes like you, and they have some practice going through this with other student athletes, I think that that can be super useful. But huge caveat that the student athlete has to be in the driver's seat of this process and can't just be like, all right, well, they're taking care of posting me on Twitter and emailing my profile out to their coach friends. So I'm good. I'll just go play.
It's so the point you made about like so much pressure is, I mean, it's such a short period of time where it's like, let's say for example, our kids that, one of our guys that's going to Vassar, he committed late. He didn't have anything throughout the summer. Like, and I love the kid. He's a good player. He's not a showcase type player, because he just doesn't have great metrics. Like his exit velocity is not amazing, but he barrels up a bunch of balls. His 60 is not amazing, but like he's not slow and he's not going to crush you on the bases. So all of a sudden after the head first camp, and he's got like 3 or 4 colleges interested in him, and they all want visits, and the ones that he's interested in, he wants visits. So like you've got 3 or 4 college coaches, maybe 8, because if you're thinking the head coach and the recruiting guy, and then you got to visit these places, and they probably want you to come back to camp to see you one more time. And all of this happens within like a month, 2 months, and then it's like, okay, well, do I apply to all these places? But sometimes the application process can be daunting, and it's like, I'm not applying to all these places if they're not for sure going to offer me baseball wise, and I haven't went and seen it yet, but the deadline's coming up. So like, yeah, I mean, I totally get that. And I think most baseball guys, if they're advising you, most guys that work for orgs around us, they know their stuff. They know their stuff. They know the best practices. And you're right. There's no one way. And I tell families, this is why my job is hard. And I take a lot of crap sometimes, because nobody has a checklist of you do these 10 things and then you're a college athlete. Like, should we email coaches? You can. Should we go to camps? You can. Is this a good idea? For some people, it's just like there's so many different ways to get recruited. There's so many avenues in which people are recruited. That's why it's hard. So you almost have to outline like do's and don'ts. Like, hey, do these things. These are all good, right? These things over here, these are bad. We're going to put these in a bucket. We don't want to do these. These are going to get us not recruited, right? All these things, one of them might get us recruited. A combination of them might get us recruited. But like, we should do these things to increase our chances of being recruited. And I won't throw any names out there, but like some of the guys you would hire as a consultant, recruiting consultant, some of them are very well respected. And if they call up a school and say, I got a guy for you, that coach can be like, oh, cool. Like, so-and-so called me.
Right. There's a trust there, maybe.
There's another
relationship. Great.
Yeah. There's another set of guys. It happened this year where, I'll say it, one of our guys committed to a school, and I'm good friends with the coach. he came out and said, like, if you didn't put your stamp of approval on this kid and call me about him, I would have never recruited him because so and so emailed me about him. And every time that guy emails me with his list of kids, it's in a Word document. They all, like, most of the time, it's a waste of time. So I'm not recruiting those kids. And the problem is, like, you're paying copious amounts of money for someone just to retweet a video of you, which if you it's like when parents ask, so I go to this, like, a perfect game showcase. When I first got, if you have the means to do it and you want to hire somebody because they've got 7,000 coaches that follow them and they're going to retweet your stuff and they're going to promote you, then sure, it's as long as they're retweeting, like, videos of you doing college level things, it's not a bad idea. Do I think your money is better spent elsewhere? Yes. And I think that's, kind of what you're saying is, like, they have to be a trusted individual. And when they call a coach and they say, here, I got a guy, that coach is going to listen,
That I think is so important because I had this conversation probably 3 or 4 years ago with a coach where he was like, yeah, so this a recruiting advisor reaches out to me and says, I have a guy for you. And the coach's response was, okay, when's the last time you watched my team play? When's the last time you saw my program play? What do you know about about my program? Like, I'm honestly curious because a lot of these folks, like, unless they do have that depth of relationship with coaches, I think that's part of the potential for missing is, and also honestly for undermining that trust. If they keep emailing coaches and saying, here's my list of guys, I got a guy that's perfect for you, and they're like, look, you're just sending me the leftovers from
100%.
You didn't think that this kid was good enough for this other school that I know you reach out to, and so you're sending him to me. Like, that's not how I'm trying to fill my recruiting roster.
Man, you have no idea. Every other podcast, at least, a coach has mentioned something along those lines where it's like, when's the last time you've watched me play? You know what I mean? Or, how do you know what's on my roster? And they're right. When we were coaching D3, we'd get some travel orgs that would be like, I got a guy for you. Like, who is it? Well, he's the 4th starter on our C team, but, like, he's D3 guy. He's not one of those D1 guys. What does he throw? 76, but he pounds his own. It's like, okay, dude, like, you got to go to a D3 game. Like, cause now I don't even, when you call me, I don't want to pick up the phone. Like, I have nothing to say to you. Go ahead.
Which I think is the same for players, though, as well. I think that one of the best thing that I think players can do, the best thing you can do to optimize your recruiting is to keep getting better at baseball and getting better in the classroom. The better you are with your grades, the better you are on the field, the more doors are open. Another really important piece of it, I think, is educating yourself about these different levels of baseball. Watch as much college baseball as you can, not just the, Vandy versus UT. Like, don't just watch it on TV. That's great. But also, if you're thinking about, oh, maybe I want to play in the NESCAC, great. After, like, during COVID, everybody added live streams to their website. Go watch some live streams. Like, it's way more accessible now than it ever has been. And so there's no excuse to be able to say, like, well, I don't know where I fit. I haven't been able to watch that level of college baseball. Go find it. Go watch some live streams so that you see what that product is like on the field and get a sense of how it compares to you, how it compares to your recruiting process. What are the things that stand out? You're like, oh man, that game moves faster at the D3 level than I thought it did. This, there's not a pitcher on this D3 roster throwing under 87. All right, that's different than I expected, or whatever the case may be.
I talked to Rome last week. For those listening who don't know, Rome is one of my good friends, but he's an assistant coach at Denison. He was my college coach when we were in college, or when I was in college. He was a grad assistant. We have 2 kids on Denison right now. Their roster, they split time at DH. One, they're both a little banged up. They can't play the field, but they're sophomores and they're number 2 team in the country. And I was like, well, why are you guys number 2, Rome? Like, you hit the piss out of it? You throwing the piss out of it? What, he was like, we're field 970 and we're hitting 330 and we've got 5 guys that throw 90. I'm like, well, I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
there
recipe.
you go, brother. You know what I mean? But like, you would never. It's little old Denison, man. I mean,
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah, an incredible
outside of
school that a
Columbus,
lot of people.
Ohio, and no one knows
Exactly. A
about
lot
that
of
school. No
no
one
one
knows
knows about
about that
Denison,
school.
and but more people should, right? Like it's a great program run by great coaches, playing an incredibly high level of baseball and offering an unbelievable academic experience. Like it checks all the boxes for kids who are looking for a good college experience, but it's kind of a hidden gem, partially just because it's in the middle of the country or it's not a
It's
not
in
a Power
Ohio.
Five school. It's yeah,
It's in
middle.
Ohio.
I'd
It's
call it
Power
middle.
Five outside of Columbus and Granville.
Yeah,
Nothing to do in Granville, but it's 15 minutes away from Columbus. But I mean, just people just don't know. They just don't know, man. And I mean, there's we talk about relationship with coaches. Like I've missed and I think I could probably tell this story too. The player wouldn't be mad. I've got a shortstop who Zach Hansen. He was the first year I coached. I took over the 16A team, and we tried to put him on 16B. And the only reason he got moved up to 16A was because our shortstop for that team went to another program. So summer going into his senior year, he just was like, I always knew he was good defensively, but I mean, he was smoking balls and he's quick and he didn't make errors. I'm like, you're probably a college second baseman at a higher level. Well, I call up JJ at Wofford and, because I said, look, and actually Tinkham was in town too with Holy Cross. I said, you guys in town? They're like, yeah, we're in town this weekend. I said, cool. I said, I got a kid. You got to come out and watch him. I said, is he D1? I don't know. Maybe. I said, if he has a really good day, you're going to come back and watch him again. I said, if he has an average day, you probably won't come back and watch him. But I said, the kid is just incredible in the field, and now he's putting it together at the plate. So Tinkham and JJ show up, and Emory was recruiting Zach, and I knew that was like not a fallback option, but like I knew that Emory was like, okay, he really liked Emory. Emory loved him, but for Zach's, I was like, if I can get this kid D1 and he wants to do that, then I need to. So they show up, and Hansen hadn't made an error all summer. He makes 2 errors in the first inning. In his first 2 at-bats, he makes 78 look like 98. By the 4th inning, JJ and Tinkham both had left. And we still joke about it to this day, like that they came out and, Zach just didn't have a good day. But I've called them since then to come out and see guys, and they've come out and they've seen guys, and they're like, I love that kid, but he's not for us. Or we have 2 other kids that are committed going to Wofford next year. So the whole relationship thing, even if I miss or they come out and it's not, I didn't sell them a bill of goods, say you're going to see 98 and they saw 78. But I told them what they were getting. I said, but this kid has a chance, maybe. And then Zach committed to Emory. He's a freshman there this year. Midway through the season, he took over the starting spot at shortstop. So was I totally wrong? No, he had the worst day of his life. Is he mid-major D1 material? He probably is better fitted for D3. He'll probably be happier. He'll play more there. But that just goes to the point of like, you got to make sure people have good relationships with schools, because if I'm consistently doing that and those coaches are consistently coming out and seeing kids and leaving after the 4th inning, they're never going to come back. You know what I mean? Every time I call them again, they're going to say, nah, no thanks. Like, it's a waste of my time. So, I guess to wrap up our recruiting, services and recruiting, outside consulting, it can be good if the guy is trustworthy and has good contacts. And I guess that's where you got to do the research, and number of Twitter followers does not equal clout.
No, I personally think it has a lot to do with approach. Like I think that the way that
I
they
love what you
approach
said.
the
I love what you
conversations, like,
said. And I wrote it down to go back and clip it. So if you've made it this far in the interview, you will see when you said, this, if they get on the phone and they say, yeah, I'll get you somewhere.
I got it. Yeah, that's not.
Red flag.
Yep, huge red flag. If
I,
it's
I
like
love what you said there.
I will promote you out, as opposed to, hey, let's talk about how to go about this process and how we can find the best fit, how we whatever we're, pushing proactivity, putting the player in the driver's seat. Like, those are the things that in a first conversation, personally, I'd look for.
You also said something in the middle of that, between both of us ranting and me telling stories around the campfire. You said the best thing a player can do, and this needs to be printed out, put on a bulletin board. I mean, everywhere on 285. Like, the best thing you can do, players and parents, turn it up, listen. The best thing you can do is you have to keep getting better. You have to keep getting better, because there will come a time when you will play in front of college coaches, or you will go to showcases in front of college coaches. And if you've spent all of your time and money into resources to get you seen instead of resources to make you better, when you're seen, you're not going to be good enough. And that's what it comes down to, is the bottom line. It's like, this is a business for college coaches. Now, each college coach is running a different business, so what they're looking for, what they need, how they keep their job is different, but it's a business, so they want the best players that will provide the best team experience, that will provide the best attributes to their team. So you have to be good enough, right? And at 13 years old, okay, you don't need to be sending emails. At 14 years old, you don't need to be sending emails. If you're good enough at 14 years old, they can't talk to you yet, but they will find you and they'll know about you, okay? What, timeline wise, Max, what do you think for college kids or high school kids to be starting this whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so as you mentioned, the rule changes a couple of years ago. Was that in 2019, 2021, whenever that was? I think that then put some kind of hard dates, and everyone was panicked. They're like, oh, now they can't talk to me as a freshman. The reality of the schools that we work with, again, we most of the schools that attend and recruit our camps tend to be more selective. You need more of an academic record before they can kind of like really proceed with you,
Mm-hmm.
even D1s included. They're not going to, even before the rule change, there's no way that Yale was going to be like, this 13-year-old throws 96, he's coming to Yale. That's not how the process works at those sorts of schools, generally speaking. So I think that for the schools that we work with, what we see is there's a huge benefit, I think, for a lot of kids to get some exposure if they're ready, if their on-field product is ready. Then there's some benefit for kids who are looking D1 to get exposure the summer headed into their junior year and start to get in front of those coaches, get their names highlighted on lists, start attending some on-campus camps, get in front of them, in front of these coaches, start the dialogue. Because a really important piece of the recruiting process is the relationship that you have with the coaching staff as well. And so you're not going to build that relationship purely by sending cold emails to 200 coaches at a time. That's not how that's going to work. You're going to eventually want to meet these guys and talk to them face to face. And I think that getting some exposure the summer before your junior year delivers a huge benefit, especially if you're targeting any D1 schools. I think that that's when the recruiting process for those sorts of schools really starts to heat up. Now, The reality is, if you're looking at some of these, if you're looking at a SEC school and you see them the summer before your junior year and they like you, yeah, there's a realistic possibility if they like you enough that they're going to say, "Here's your offer, let's go." For a lot of the schools that are a little bit more selective and need more academic foundation before they move through the next steps of the recruiting process, the reality isn't that by September 1st, your junior year, you're signed, locked, and loaded, and you're done with your college process. It's going to continue through at least the first semester of your junior year, because a lot of these schools need at least one semester of junior. They'll need a test score, and we need at least 2.5 years of a high school transcript to really start to move forward with the kind of nitty gritty of the recruiting process at these schools. So that's the reality of it, is that you're not going to see immediate signed, sealed, and delivered type motion that summer. But if you get some exposure that summer, if you are targeting those sorts of schools, then when the time does come, when it gets to January, February, and you're able to have those more in-depth conversations with the academics to back it up, then you're ready to move. So I think that getting exposure before junior year, and then for a lot of kids that are targeting D3 schools, targeting high academic Division III schools, I think that the summer before senior year, as you're headed into your senior year, is the time for that recruiting. You're going to be applying to college. You're going to have 3 full years of a high school transcript. You're probably going to have test scores, if as long as you've kind of prepped and taken them. And so you're going to have what you need, which ultimately is what a lot of these schools need to be able to move forward. Is they're going to say, great, send me your academic stuff, and I liked you on the field, I like you as a person, we've built this relationship, and now we can kind of start to move forward. So I think that summer before junior year, you lay the foundation for activity in the spring and summer after your junior year. But then that summer headed into senior year, like for this summer, it's the class of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Things can move really, really quickly with recruiting. You might see a coach on August 1st on Long Island, and then by August 9th, as you mentioned, one of your former players who saw him in late July, early August,
Mm-hmm.
and went straight through. And then by the time September hits, they might be signed, sealed, and delivered, and say, great, like this is the only school I'm applying to. I'm applying early decision, and coach has put me in one of the slots. So things move really quickly that summer across all levels. But I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind, especially for these kind of more selective, more academically minded programs.
How should they go about? Well, first of all, just to piggyback on what you said, if you have the means, I do think it's a very good idea to go to a camp or 2 or 3 before that summer going into the senior year, like your junior summer, even though you know that you're probably a D3 guy, or maybe you don't know, but to get that experience of what that's like is huge. And I mean, ATL runs a showcase every year that we bring coaches to, so you get a little bit of a feel. But again, it's on our home field. It's around coaches and players you're familiar with. It's not the same as like everybody's rocking the same camp shirt with a number and a bib, and there's like 12 coaches, drinking Gatorade and coffee and tobacco behind the plate with their radar guns and just chatting it up like that, and you're the only one on the mound. That's different than that's a different experience. If you can go get those nerves out early, it might help you move forward. And I tell parents that a lot. What do you think in terms of when they're selecting showcases? What's the best way to select, instead of just registering for every showcase under the sun? What's the best way to select them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like even if money is an unlimited resource for your family, time is not, right? And so
Right.
there's no way that you can go to, I'm sure your families are getting like hundreds of emails from different showcases and camps and PBR this and perfect game that and all that. So you need to, even if you can afford to go to all of them, you still need to be selective, because there's only so many days in your calendar. The things that I look for, and the things that I would encourage families to look for is, you do want to get efficiency in your recruiting process by going to a place that has the right the right kind of programs that are recruiting. Now, this means programs that you might know about, but also college programs that maybe like the Dennisons of the world, right? If you show up and you're like, well, I know I'm really interested in Emory because it's nearby, it's in my backyard, and so I know a lot about it. I wonder what some other schools that are kind of like that. They got the right academic profile, they got the right size profile, they're playing Division 3. Like where are there some of these concentrations of not just the programs I'm interested in, but also what I would term lookalike programs. If I'm interested in school X has a lot in common with school Y, so I should also be interested in school Y. And so I think that that's a really important piece. The other thing I think is that they're similar with the recruiting advisor conversation. There needs to be some trust there. You need to be able to go to a reputable camp that is going to deliver what they promise and even over deliver on what they promise in terms of the experience that you get. Because it's not just about, you kind of pointed to this with you need some practice in front of you. You need some practice in these kind of settings. It's not just about what are the uniforms on the coaches behind that are holding the radar gun. That's a piece of it, but also what's the experience at camp? How ready does the showcase environment make you, just the staff there make you before you get those, 7 ground balls and 8 swings or whatever the formatting is? How ready are you for that in that setting? And that's one thing that I think that we spend a lot of time thinking about the holistic experience at Headfirst. It's a platform for what you want to do. And yeah, an important piece of that is the coaches that attend and recruit our camps. But it's also when, Mike Shepard steps up to take his ground balls in front of the college coaches. Is he ready? Is he loose? Is he prepared? Is he feeling in his element before he does this incredibly loaded and incredibly pressurized thing? Like, how does that translate to the players, and how do we set them up for success? Is just a really crucial factor, I think.
What do you think? Okay, so you're gonna go to camp. You're gonna get 5 ground balls, and you're gonna get 8 swings. How do you set yourself apart in that little bit of time frame? It's like less than 2 minutes.
It is. It's quick. And that's why. So I do think that the other thing about finding the right showcase opportunity is, what are the contexts for exposure? If it's just 5 ground balls and 8 swings, and that's the entirety of what you're seeing, then that's really, really tough, right? But if there's also gameplay and there's also metrics that are taken and there's also the chance to, talk with these coaches, then I think the more kind of levels that you add to that, the more relaxed you're going to feel, because you're like, all right, this isn't just these 5 ground balls, and then if I make one error, I'm just gonna, cry myself to sleep and be gone, right? There's other opportunities coming behind it. What I think that the way to stand out in that is to truly be yourself. One thing that I would say when I talk with the outfielders before they showcase at Headfirst, and please feel free to disagree with me, but one of the things that I always said is, look, if you're an outfielder with a good arm, I would actually love for you. You're going to get four fly balls and ground balls out in right field. I want you to take the first throw to third base, and I want you to throw it as far as you can over third base onto into the parking lot to show that arm strength. And then the second one, I want you to put on the money, and I want you to show the accuracy second. But cut loose and do something to stand out. If you scatter the coaches, if you make a throw towards home plate and you just bury it in Coach Shep's ear hole, not great, but hey, it's going to remember your name. So I think that, leaning into your strengths is something that I encourage. If you have a really strong arm, absolutely cut it loose. Don't play
100%.
it safe there. Don't play it safe there. I just think don't try to do something different that you've never done before. If you're a control up the middle hitter and you just make solid contact, backspin line drives up the middle, don't all of a sudden in a showcase setting say, today's the day I'm going to go 5 for 4 with 6 home runs. That's not going to set you up for success, right? You have to play your game and lean into the things that have made you successful up to that point. A, so that you can be successful, but B, to give coaches true insight into who you are as a player, even in this limited window. The other thing is, I think that players and parents especially put a lot of pressure on the outcome. I talk with a lot of families at camp and they're like, well, I had a really bad day. I went 0 for 4. It's like, sure, you went 0 for 4, but they were all line drives directly at people. That's totally different. Coaches also know that it's a limited window. and they're looking for your approach. They're looking not just for, oh, he went 0 for 4. They're thinking, well, he went 0 for 4, but actually he walked twice and his command of the zone was incredible. And also when he got on base, he ran the bases real well. And I saw the contact that he made, and he just happened to have bad luck that day. He dotted a few, but center fielder was there. And I think that thinking more about the approach and the inputs as opposed to the outcome is the other thing that I talk a lot with families and student athletes about. Because I think that coaches notice that, like, they're looking how you take a pitch, how you approach your at bat, how you approach your inning on the mound, how you approach and prepare for a ground ball in game in the showcase. And it's more than just, oh, I fumbled this one ground ball. Okay, what were your actions leading into that, and how does that give insight for coaches into who you are as a player, how you approach the game, and what your potential ceiling is? Because coaches are recruiting the player on the field, right? If they're looking at Coach Shep playing the field, yes, they're looking at a 2025 player. But when they're thinking about recruiting Coach Shep, they're thinking, who is this player right now versus who is this player going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in my program, on my weight training, working with my strength coach, working with my dining halls unlimited meal plan, like all these things that you grow so much as a player from 16 to 22. It's total folly to think, well, I'm a finished product and coaches are recruiting a finished product. They're recruiting your projectability and your ceiling as a player as well. What is the room for upside for this kid that I'm going to bring into my program? Who's he going to be in my program in 2, 3, 4 years down the line?
I would also, I don't want to say I disagree with a little bit of that, but I know I had because I get this from high school parents and younger. Let me clarify one thing. You might agree, you might not.
Mhm.
The question I would get would be, all right, my son is 15, 16 years old and he's throwing 82. So I watch these Georgia Tech pitchers and they're throwing 94. So you would think, he's got some room to grow. He's going to put some weight on, by his junior year, he'll be throwing 86. And then by his senior year, he'll be throwing 90. So would they take a look at him? The answer, in my opinion, is no. An emphatic no. Because I think coaches, when they predict what a player is going to be, they look at the player and they like a lot of things about that player at that point in time. But they get excited. They say, this kid can probably play or do something for us right now. But I see all these things we can fix or can grow on. And then we'll sign this player as is. And if he goes and grows where we think we're gonna have a really good player.
I think that's fair. That's a better way to put that. Because yes, they want to recruit players who can contribute to their program right away, and also who are going to keep growing in their program. The other thing that I would add there is coaches recruit to their strengths too. Like, I talked to some coaches who would say, it was an infield guy who's incredible with infield footwork and hitting. Great, that's his bag. So he would say, look, when I'm out recruiting, I'm not the coach who can get a pitcher who's throwing 83. I can get him up to 90. So for pitchers, I need kids to come in more polished because I don't have the skill set to develop that in the same way that I do. I can take raw athleticism in the middle infield and make him an incredible shortstop. I can't take raw athleticism and the potential for future velocity and turn that into actual velocity, because that's not where I am. So coaches also need to recruit to their strengths. And so that's why if you look at two peer schools that are, competitive with each other, otherwise look very similar, some of them might say, this Max McKenna kid is at the top of my boards. And the other one might say, this Max McKenna kid, I will not touch with a 30-foot pole because my skill set doesn't align with what I can develop in a player.
It's so true. I mean, Rome, I'll see a guy, and I'm a hitting guy, and so he's much better pitching guy than I am, obviously. I remember we'd be at Headfirst, and I'm like, this kid chucks it pretty good. He's like, I'm like, what's the stink face for? He's like, watch him throw a fastball. I'll throw a fastball. It's straight. I'm like, what about it? He goes, watch him throw another one. He'll throw it, and then it'll just cut. I'm like, it's a cutter. He goes, ask him if he meant to do that. And I'm like, is that four seam or a cutter? He's like, nah, just four seam. And Rome was like, if the guy's naturally cutting the ball, he doesn't have feel, and that's going to be really hard to, like, that's just not going to develop well. So it's the same thing when we talk about, like we said, coaches want a player that can come in and contribute as is, right? Coaches will take a chance on a player that can't contribute right away if they think that ceiling is way up there, right? Like it's the line graph. You know, we've all seen the GIF where the scale where it goes up. If you're over here, you can be up here. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that one. It's the same thing with players. It's like with professional athletes. Like the better they are in the MLB or the better they are in the NFL, like the more lenient coaches are with what they can get away with. And it's the same thing with recruiting. It's like the higher your ceiling in certain areas, the more we're going to be okay giving away other areas. Like, you know, I'll have a first baseman that comes say, or third baseman will say, Coach, what do I need to do to be a college player? I'm like, okay, what position you play? Third base. Okay. What's your 60? 7'9". Okay. You better probably go to first base. And then when you go to first base, you better hit tanks, because 7'9" is so slow, you're going to clog the bases in coaches' eyes.
You better get to jog around the bases.
Yes, you better be jogging. You better be jogging. So it's just a give and take where, you know, if your ceiling is higher in some areas, they'll be okay. You know, if you're the best defensive shortstop in the country, they're going to be okay if you're just going to hit 200. But if you are the most average shortstop, you are either moving to third base or you better hit 350. You know what I mean? It's always a give and take. I mean, I think life is that way in general, but
1,000%. And the interesting thing is that also differs coach by coach, because everybody has this. I think that most coaches hold to it, like the archetype of the power hitting first baseman, right? Like, all right, if you're a third baseman running 7'9", you got to move to first base and you got to hit tanks. I talked with this one coach in particular. This conversation stands out because it was so different than that. He was like, look, I think position in my recruiting, position by position, tool by tool. When I'm recruiting a first baseman, I do not care if they can hit. I care about their glove. And here's why. He said, at my level of baseball, he's a D3 coach. At my level of baseball, 90% of errors happen at first base, whether or not they happen there or it looks like they happen there. Because if you have a good first baseman who can pick and save errors from every other infield position, then you're saving like 4 runs a game. If you're minimizing errors at first base, you're saving runs a game. So it doesn't matter if he contributes with the bat. I need a kid who can dig everything out and make every other infielder look good, because that's going to cut down on 90% of my team errors, and we're going to win games because I'm saving runs at first base.
You don't realize, I mean, that's something me and Gio talked about. We would always honestly have probably the worst first baseman, but he was the best hitter in the league. Like, you know, we love hitting, right?
Elevate to celebrate.
Elevate to celebrate, baby. Protect your chickens. When you have a good defensive first baseman and he goes out and he plays a full game, like, you kind of just look at your coaches and you're like, damn, like it's so nice having, like, we always say, like, we'll give up defense for hitting. And I mean, to an extent, I do agree, because, like, I know my starting shortstop's going to get 3, 4, 5 at bats a game. He may not get a ground ball.
Yeah.
He may get 7, and he made 6 air. Like, you know what I mean? You just don't know. It's like every coach recruits to their strength. They coach to their strengths. 100%.
Optimizing for different things. My coach always said, the 9 best hitters will play. I don't care how many people I have to hide in the corner outfields. If you can hit, you're going to start.
100%. And it's great when they aren't exposed. But when you do have someone that's unbelievable defensively, you look and you're like, Oh my God, that's so nice. Like why can't we need to do this more often. And then when that person comes to the plate in the bottom of the sixth inning and you're down a run and they've got guys in the second and third and they get blown away with three fastballs, you're like, oh, shit, like maybe we want the hitting guy. You know what I mean? Baseball's so hard, man. I mean, it's we're we're recruiting and coaching and playing a game that, I mean, you know the cliche, fail 3 out of 10 times and you're a Hall of Famer, right? Like it's such a hard game. And now I think in the past, what coaches looked for was it was much easier to predict than today, because today you have so many more metrics. You have so many guys that still say like, well, I don't care as much about the metrics. Like I want just dirt balls. I want, there's so many
Yep.
more ways coaches go about recruiting now because of the technology, because of the metrics. And when kids ask me like, what's important, I'm like, everything's important, but like your metrics matter. Like you may not like it, and I've said in this podcast before, like all these kids grew up, in Atlanta, so they're all familiar with, Dad wants to talk about Greg Max, where he didn't throw that hard, but he was good, and my kid doesn't throw that hard. And it's like, yeah, but the game is different now. It's not just like, he just gets wins, and we all know the kid that like, if he went and threw 30 pitches at a showcase, everybody would be drooling. But that kid's high school team and travel team knows like, we ain't won a game that he started in 4 years because he
Yep.
just walks the house, or it takes him 80 pitches to get through 3 innings.
Yep.
And that just
No, it's
falls back on the college coach to have to like sift through all of that to recruit his team.
and again, it depends, but it depends on the coach, right? Like some coaches are like, I'm looking for dudes who throw 80 throw 90 plus. Let's say if I'm a
Mm-hmm.
D1 school, I'm like, that's the line I've drawn in the sand. One thing I used to say to parents is like, well, it turns out that just because you throw 90 plus doesn't mean that you start every count with an extra strike. Like you don't get to start 0-1 as a pitcher just because you throw 90. Like that's not how the rules work. So
Right.
yeah, getting outs is most important. But one really, really interesting conversation that I used to have with one of the most data driven college coaches I've ever spoken with. This was Chris Gordon when he was at Duke. He would talk about being off the bell curve. Find something that makes you weird. That can be high velo, high spin rate, or they got carved by this dude from Notre Dame who is a lefty throwing 76, and they could not figure out why. Then he starts looking at all the TrackMan data because this man was incredibly analytically minded,
Mm-hmm.
pulls all the TrackMan data. It turns out that not only was this kid throwing 76, it's incredibly tough to be below hitting speed 3 times through the lineup, right? You gear
Mm-hmm.
down and your hitters figure it out. What they couldn't notice was that his release point, because his stride was so short and he was releasing the ball a full 18 inches behind that typical release point, and it was 76, and it was low spin. So kids were swinging over the top of this ball all day. They couldn't make the adjustment because of these invisible things that the data pointed out. So he's like, yeah, I want to go find that kid too. I want the kid throwing
Right.
97, spinning it at 2,400. I also want the kid throwing 76 at 1,200. Like I'm going to find the kids that are just, if you're league average, if you're whatever the league you're in, if you're like at the top of the bell curve, you're throwing 87 with 2,000 spin, great. You're going to be successful in high school. How does that translate if that is what college hitters see every day? And again, it just depends on the coach and what they're looking for. Some coaches would have no trouble. They would be totally comfortable recruiting that kid throwing 76 with a low spin rate at the D1 level. Other coaches, that's a lot of exposure. If all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
that kid doesn't pan out, then you don't look like you know what you're doing.
How
And
much
so there's
job
more
security you got
risk.
to,
Right.
mess
There's a
around?
lot more risk with that kid. But like his point was always so interesting to me is just being off average in either direction. Find something that makes you weird and push farther in that direction.
Well, I mean, it's like Joe Madden, right? Like when he would do something crazy and off the wall, it's just Joe Madden, guys. Like, I mean, it's what he does. You know what I mean? But he built the, I would say, the trust of the front office, but he built that aura, or that followed him. So
Yep.
he could do weird stuff, like, you know what I mean? And then for me, for example, 2 summers ago, I was coaching my 17U team, and it was the second year I had him. And the first year we were not good. The second year we were not good, but we won a lot of games that we shouldn't, because I mean, we didn't have a lot of kids that wanted to go play college, and we didn't have any power arms. Talent wise, we probably should have won a lot less games, but like they just bought into like a lot of the stuff. I'm like, look, we're gonna win. This is how we're gonna win games. Like we're the best base running team of that I've seen all summer. We didn't have anybody that ran under a 6'8", 6'9". I remember bringing a 5-man infield in a game, and it worked. They just did it. Like nobody said anything. Nobody was like looked at me weird. Nothing. But I remember because I put the infielder on the opposite side you would think he should go on. And because after the game, they were like, Coach, why'd you put the infielder on that side? I was like, I explained it. They're like, oh, that makes sense. The next day, we faced so we ended up winning that game. There was a ball hit in the 5-man infield in between the second and third, short and third, threw home, threw back to first, double play. I should have retired. It was the coolest moment in my coaching career. 5-man infield worked. Next day, we played like the number, I don't know, 9 team in the country. Everyone was committed D1. We ended up winning because we did a dirt ball read to second. We did a steal to third on like the momentum leads that we've been hampering on, and we stole home. And that summer, we stole home like 6 or 7 times. And the guys just like, I just told the kid was like, Coach, I got the timing. And I was like, well, do it, Wolfson. He did it. And it was a winning run. And it was unreal. But like that was the trust that we had built, and it was all good. The following summer, I did a 5-man infield, and it was the first time I had this group. I didn't go back to get them at 16. I just had them at 17. And I remember some of the dads were like, not shouting in a bad way, like, but from the stands, they were like, you got a lefty up. You got a lefty. You got a lefty. And of course, like, I don't remember what the kid did. He got out, but it was irrelevant. I think he struck out or popped up in the infield, but it was just like, I remember feeling so weird in that moment about why are the dads like coming off as like they're questioning me? And maybe they were, and maybe they have every right to, but it's when you build that relationship or that trust with your players, or you can do stuff like be a Division I and recruit 78 with no spin. You know what I mean? It's all about, your management. It's the same thing like when you're working at Headfirst. Like if you're like, hey, Sully, I'm gonna hop on a podcast. Okay,
I'm gonna
let's
do
do it.
something weird. I
Yeah,
think it's gonna work though.
I'm gonna hop on a podcast and we're gonna get some marketing out of there, and I'm gonna talk. Oh, who's it with? Shep. Are you sure, Max? And you're like, yeah, it'll be fine. It's Sully, and you've been there 14 years. Sully's like, all right, cool, do what you want. Like you've built that relationship and you've built it up, and I'm sure most parents can, they kind of can probably look back in their professional lives and they can say, yeah, like I know the guy at work that, can do whatever he wants. You know what I mean? Like we talked about like coaches are more lenient with their best players. I just tell parents, the best guy in your office and the guy with the highest sales, he's not getting fired for coming in late.
Nope.
He's not getting fired for coming in late. Brother, you put results out there, and it's the same thing with recruiting, man. If you put results out there, you're gonna find a spot. Very rarely do kids fall through the cracks anymore like they used to.
Yeah. It does make it harder, right? Like I think that, your point about there's so many more metrics and so many more like the Rapsodo, the TrackMan, the hit tracks, like all the driveline stuff, like it's all incredible stuff to be able to have access to and use. And it's more data points, but more data points doesn't necessarily mean more useful data unless you're using it, right? So like getting Rapsodo data on yourself can be really valuable if you're able to then turn that into, here's how I use this to improve. Here's how I use this to develop my game. Here's how I use that to lean into what makes me effective as a pitcher, or as a hitter, or whatever the case may be. But I think that there's also just, more noise is more noise. You have to filter for the signal. You got to find what works for you within that data, identify it, learn from it, and use it. And coaches are the same way. Some coaches, college recruiters that I've spoken with know exactly what to do. They look at TrackMan and it's like they're fluent in TrackMan, right?
Mhm.
They look at the dashboard and they're like, I know exactly what I'm looking at. Some are fluent in the blast motion sensors, some are fluent in Rapsodo, and others look at it and they're like, all right, this is the most expensive radar gun I've ever bought because I bought a Rapsodo for 5K and you know it tells me spin rate, but I don't know what to do with that. Or,
Right.
some coaches on the staff do and some don't. Or, we use some of that stuff at camp and then give it to coaches, and some of them use it a lot. Some of them it's the only thing that they look at when they're assessing a pitcher. Others, they may or may not know what to do with it. And so they're looking at their own notes, they're looking at velos, they're looking at that sort of stuff. They're looking at, does he get outs? Some people are looking at the data to say, does he get outs? And what about this data tells me why he gets those outs?
Or why is he getting hit so much? Like
Yeah,
the new fad, I mean this was years ago, but like short guys with high spin rates. Coaches were like, oh, before it was like they want just the big donkeys because they throw hard and everyone looks. And,
yeah,
me being 5'7", I threw 85, 86. I'd be like, God bless it. If I was 6'7", bro, I would be throwing 100 miles an hour. It's like, well, probably you wouldn't, but also it's easier to hit than the short guy with high spin rate. And, you know, we know that through the data. And like you said, you just have to, some schools have all this data, but they literally have no idea they just compile it. And it's like, it sits there. It's like, well, what do I do with it? Some guys don't know how
right.
to coach with that data. It's like, I could build the best home gym down in my basement. If I don't know what I'm doing with those barbells, then I'm not going to get any. It looks cool. It's sweet to say we got TrackMan at Stadium, but I'm not doing anything with it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
How is it useful? How am I using that to progress what is the actual things that need to be happening?
Yeah, and what I'm about to say, I'm going to end up clipping this and putting this somewhere. And recruiting manifesto I'm making a video recruiting manifesto because I can't be asked making a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or bulletin board points anymore because I don't think that they get looked at and read through and digested. But I think I'm going back through and it's taking me so long. It's so time consuming and tedious. But I'm basically going back through all the interviews and I'm cutting out each little bit where a coach, I ask him anything recruiting that would be at FAQ, like, well, what do you think a 14-year should be doing? And then he says whatever, and then I'm cutting it out and put it in one video. But now I forgot what I was gonna say. What the hell was I just talking about? What the hell were we just talking about?
Data.
Oh, yes. When a kid, I try to tell them they're really nervous to go talk to a coach, right? So, and you can add on to this as well. I always tell guys, when you're going to a camp, make the camp your own, right? Go up, interact with the coach during that camp. Don't wait till the end when everybody's leaving and going to the parking lot. Like, try to do it before. But just talk to that coach like you're talking to me. Like, I tell them, most all baseball guys come out of a mold. We are all similar in a lot of ways. Like clowns, we like to joke around. We like to have a good time. We got to recruit kids that we're going to spend 12 months of the year with, or 8 months of the year with, 9 months, more time with you than the families. I want to recruit kids that are enjoyable at a 6 a.m. lift and also enjoyable on a 10-hour bus ride. Like, so just be personable and be yourself. And when you go on these visits, don't ask the coach like, what's the standard, just boring question to ask the coach, like, what's your hitting philosophy? Ask the coach, how are you going to make me better? What do you do to make your hitters better? If that coach, now if this is your only school, then maybe you just got to go with it. But if you've got options, and if you're a hitter and that coach can't tell you how he's going to develop you with a burning passion in his voice and in his eyes, you you probably are getting sold a bill of goods. But if that coach says, you know what, I'm glad you asked, because like, let's go outside. Like, let's look. We got the short bat, we got the weighted balls. I love this long bat, the end loaded one. I don't really like the hand loaded one as much. But then here's what our warm up is every day, and we're throwing med balls and we're doing this, and we're doing that. Like, if that guy starts going on a tangent and your mom looks like, holy crap, what's going on? And dad's like, this is cool, but I don't really understand it. That's probably the guy you want to go play for, right? Like, you want to play for the guy that's got a passion, not the guy that's like, gotta go watch a bullpen today. No, I don't want to go play for Rome. That's like, yo, let's watch this bullpen, and we're gonna look at all these spin rates. Like, look at that, look at that. Look, Rome does this little thing. He loves. Look at that, look at that. Like, oh, that's not like, yeah, like I want to go play for that guy. I want if I'm falling asleep in the recruiting meeting, I'm gonna fall asleep for 4 years. Like, I want to play for someone that's gonna light the fire and be able to articulate what they're gonna do to make me better on the field for 4 years.
Absolutely. I think that two things. One of the best things that my coach, when he's recruiting me, Coach Thurston, legend of Division III baseball, legend in pitching, he would videotape. He would make you you'd throw bullpens in like just your Under Armour, and he would videotape them in slow motion. And then he would immediately take you up to the office and you'd watch your bullpen to like watch. He's watching for all sorts of biomechanical stuff. He's like, yeah, see how your bicep there is firing. And, he'd look at external rotation and be like, all right, there's more in the tank because the way your arm lays, I know that you can get to X, Y, or Z. Like, we need to develop, we need to do long, whatever the case may be. He was so passionate about that and about developing players that 1000% stood out and made that decision so easy for me as I was going through the recruiting process, for him to be like, he lives and breathes pitching, lives and breathes baseball. And so seeing that in that visit meant everything. The other thing, I think that a lot of players and especially players, I think they forget that the recruiting process is a two-way fit. It's not just, oh, I hope a coach likes me. If they like me, I'm going to like them, right? You need to like them back. It needs to be the right fit. They have to want you in their program. And also it needs to be the right fit program for you. So when you talk about character fit, yeah, you need to make sure that locker room, that bus, that dugout are the ones that you want to be in, that are going to be the best for you, bring the best out in you over the time you spend there. You're spending a lot of time with these dudes. You're spending, in season, you're spending what, 30, 40 hours a week?
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes more.
I mean, like, these are the people that you're going to spend the most time
Weird
with. And then
hours,
also, by the
too.
way, they're going to be in your wedding like 20 years later too. So like, these are lifelong relationships. It needs to be a personality fit, a character fit in both directions. And that's what I think players, I like to empower players to think about. It's not just, I'll have whatever coach will have me. You are empowered in this. You have agency in your recruiting to make sure that the fit you find, yeah, the coach needs to be interested in you and they need to express interest, but that's not the end of the conversation. You also need to find the program that you are interested in that's the fit for you. It's not just the coach has all the power in recruiting and I'm just kind of a passive person who hopes somebody likes me. You have to go out there and seek that fit in the other direction as well to make sure it's best for you.
100%. And there's gonna come a point where certain people out there are gonna have multiple options, and they're gonna be able to pick and choose. And there is gonna be players that will listen to this podcast, of all the millions that do listen, that you're gonna have one option, brother, and that's okay. What you need to then do is say, okay, is this school with this staff and these players and college baseball what I want to do for the next 4 years, and is it going to be good for me? Or do I just go to a different school because I don't think that one is the right fit?
Yep.
I always err on the side of go to college and play baseball, because if you don't like it or it's not a good fit, the school sucks, whatever, you can then transfer to Georgia. You can then transfer to whatever school you want. But to go from Georgia and take a year off and say, man, I missed college, I missed it, I should have played, and try to go back is extremely hard. I was one of those guys, dude, that had no offers. Like, my dad took me to camps. I was 5'7". I'm still 5'7". I was pudgy. I am still pudgy. I was slow. I'm still slow. Like I could hit, but not a showcase type hitting. Like I was going to be in a game and I was going to barrel up every single ball or have a good at bat. I got recruited because W&J was coming to watch my best friend play, and I happened to be pitching that day, and I threw a no hitter. I was not a pitcher. I just was a thrower, and they were like, "We're gonna take a we know your high school coach really well, Coach Neal. He says that you can play college baseball. You need to go play college baseball here." And actually, we had a alum of my high school went to W&J and set the all-time hits record. And coach was like, "You are getting another Sean File." I went to W&J because that was my only option. I was not good enough to hack it academically. I thought that I could do my high school habits. I played online poker while I was studying with my flashcards and thought it would be good. I pulled a 1.8 my freshman year, my first semester. Luckily, they had the winter term. I pulled a B plus. I was able to play in the spring. I played. I had the time of my life. Get home in the summer. I'm playing Legion ball, and we won a state championship in Legion. And I hit like 750 through the state championships. I couldn't get out if I wanted to. Well, a Division II school saw me and they asked about me, and I was like, I'm already committed I'm already in college, and my parents were like, "Well, Shep, we needed to have a conversation with you because things change. We can't afford for you to go back there." And I was like, "Well, this is great. This is almost end of July. Like, when were you gonna tell me this?" But anyways, I went, and this was the school where I met Rome. I went and played there and played 4 years and had a. The school's now shut down. It was a terrible school, but like all the guys in my wedding but one were from a stemma from that school. And I'm lucky enough I'm going to have a second wedding, and all the same guys from that first wedding that were from college, or I wouldn't have been coaching college baseball if I didn't go play, but
Yeah.
they're going to be my second wedding. But it's because I went and played that first year, and even though that didn't work out, things worked out in a different way. So I always tell guys, like, it's a different kind of brotherhood. It's different when you are up at 6 a.m. for tarp with those guys. You are, up late with those guys, going out and having a good time. You're doing punishment runs with those guys. Like, it's a different brotherhood that you can't get anywhere else. And if you got a chance to do it, you have to go do it and you have to try. There's so many people that would kill for that opportunity. And if it's not the right fit, yeah, then maybe you don't go do it. But if you've got a shot to do it and the school is going to be somewhat of a right fit, then yeah, do that. And I think when you talk about backing up a little bit, when you mentioned they need to get to know who they're going to play for, I always like tell guys when they're hot and heavy with the school, try to set up an overnight visit. Like you're going to go back and they're going to, have you back. Ask if you can stay for practice. They'll most likely say yes. Ask if you can do an overnight, especially if it's a camp, because you then get to stay with the kids that are on the team and you get the vibe of the team. You get to know, like, and there's guys that will be like, yeah, coach sucks, but like, I love playing for him. Or he's a great coach, but like, man, he sucks. He is just hard, but like, or you'll get the ones that are like that you clearly know they have zero respect for that coach, or the team vibe is terrible. You'll get that right away, and you can ask those guys all those questions that you're not going to sit in the office and ask that coach. So that's
Yep.
just getting more information for you that helps you make your decision. And the more information you have, you still might make the wrong decision, right? And you may have no information, and you may make the right decision, but more information leads to a better chance of making the right decision.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, what are your filters for making that decision? What are the things you want to run this through to make sure you still might end up with a bad outcome? But if you say, all right, here's the way that I made this decision, and it was right, right? Like I ran it through the right filters and something else didn't work out, then okay, the decision had a bad outcome, but it was the right decision. Like there's also maybe you make the wrong decision. You think, actually, I need to adjust. I thought that I wanted to be at a big school, but it turns out that I disappear into a crowd and I'm really unhappy at a big school. All right, now I learned something a little bit more about myself. So one of our old interns at Headfirst came through camp and had the chance to play at some small D3 schools, some like really incredible academic institutions, great D3 baseball programs. And he said, you know what? I love college football and I want to go to a Power Five college football school. Well, his skills on the baseball field didn't line up with that. So he ended up, instead of going to going to some of these smaller D3 schools and playing, he said, I'm going to go to UT. I'm going to play club baseball and I'm going to have an absolute blast on college football Saturdays. And that was what was important in that decision for him. And he's like, was in the honors college, like incredible career there, like still played baseball at the club level, like had a lot of fun with it. But he knew he ran it through the right filters for himself, right? He knew what it was he was looking for in a college experience and said, here's what I need to do for myself. If that lines up with your baseball aspirations, that's great. If it doesn't, then you're in a little bit tougher situation. I also do agree with you. I think that it's much easier to, if you're in that situation, you're like, all right, I could go play at this small D3 school, or I could pursue other interests at a much larger school where I know that playing baseball intercollegiately is not a realistic possibility for me. It's easier to downshift out of baseball and transfer into a bigger school than it is to pick baseball back up after you're off and think, I really miss this. I need to be a part of this team. And now I need to transfer into a program I can play. That's a much harder hill to climb. And so if it's truly 50-50, I think that's a totally fair tiebreaker for making that decision and understanding that, like, hey, I might need to reassess this at the end of my first semester or end of the season, whatever it is. But I'm making the best decision that I can with the information I have at this time. Getting on campus is crucially important, I think, to assessing the fit, meeting the other players in the team, meeting the whole coaching staff, getting a sense for campus. What does schoolwork look like? Talk to players about, hey, what's the academic and athletic breakdown? Like when you're in season, how does that go? Are you writing papers on the bus every weekend? Are you able to do lab classes? I'm looking at being a pre-med major. Does that mean that I have to take all my labs in the fall and I can't take any lab classes in the spring? Like, what are these trade-offs that you're making? And there's no right or wrong choice with any of these. It's just what works for you and what is the best fit for you. It's all an individualized decision. But I like to equip families and student athletes, especially with what are the questions maybe I should be asking so that I can make this decision that's best for me. I'm not going to tell anybody where they should or shouldn't go to college. That's not my role.
No, I don't want that evil.
But if you're like, hey, here are the things I'm considering, then we can talk through. All right, what are the questions you need to ask of the coach? What are the things you need to learn when you're on campus? What are the things you need to consider? What are some other lookalike schools that maybe you haven't heard of, but that match all the criteria you're looking for in a school experience?
A few things. I'll try not to get long-winded. At the end of the day, like you mentioned, you may have all the right processes, but you may have a bad outcome. It's the same thing when you start when you're 13 years old and you're playing baseball. Well, you start a lot younger than that, but 13, 14, you're starting to think about college baseball. How do I want to get there? You could have the best trainers. You could have the best workouts. You could have the best hitting coach. You could spend all the money in the world, and you may end with a bad outcome where you're not good enough. Or you may, like some kids say, like, if I can't play D1, I'm not going to go play baseball. And that's fine. That's okay. You may end with a bad outcome. It's all about doing everything that you can. And when I say that, I don't mean start sending emails when you're 6 years old to do busy work, right? What I mean is getting yourself on the field, ready to play and be the best player that you can. Off the field, being the best human that you can. Make sure your social medias are clean, and not just, you got to live that, right? Like if you're a bad egg, it's gonna get out, and it's not just like I'm kind of a crap human, but like my socials are good, so I'll be fine. It's gonna get out.
No one will know about it.
Yeah, like coaches talk to players, and coaches talk to parents, and coaches talk to other parents. Like when you're in the stands, you get the rundown from other parents on like, what kind of kid that is. It's all about doing the cliche of like, so when you put your head down at night, you can rest easy knowing you've done everything you can. The chips are going to fall where they may. It's all about, can you live with yourself knowing I've done everything I can? I have asked Coach Shep. I have asked Coach Ken. I've asked my high school coach. I went to Head First. I went to this camp. These are the schools I want to go to. I went to their personal camp. And they just didn't like me. But like I did everything I could and my talent just wouldn't let me. You know, it's all about just being the best you can be on the field, being the best you can be off the field, putting in your due diligence on the research of what schools are going to be a right fit. And look, it's unfair that we ask kids. I'm glad the rules changed, because when you're asking a 14-year-old kid, what do you want? You want a big city? You want a small city? You want this? You want that? They don't know, man, because like,
How do they possibly know?
brother, I'm 34 years old, and I would tell you that my personality changed when I was 30, and it changed when I was 25, when I liked and when I didn't like, changed it all the way through. So like, I always tell guys, like, I hate putting on the questions when you send out a questionnaire of like, do you want to be in a big city or a small city? Well, the kid grew up in a big city, so like he either likes that or he doesn't like that. Or if he likes it, he's going to want to go to a big city, but college in a big city is different than college in a small city. And all he knows is what people have said. It's like, well, if you go to a small city, you're going to be bored. Brother, listen, college is going to be, here we go. This is what it wraps up to be. College is going to be everything you want it to be and everything you make it to be. You could go to a 4-year school and you could never see the field. And you could have the best experience of your life because I trained my ass off. I got better. I got a bunch of friends. I got a great degree. My coach loves me. I love my coach. And I had the best 4 years of my life. Yeah, I didn't play that much, but like I went to a small school, and yeah, it was a small school. I wanted to have a life outside of college. I met every single person in that school because on Friday night, I'd go to the basketball game, and then I'd go to the sorority house. And then, like, you know, or you can go to Georgia and you could be a hermit and you're like, I'm not going out and having fun, but it's because you're not physically going out and having fun. You could be the best player on Georgia's team, but if you don't put the work in, you may never play, or you may play and you don't get drafted because you were lazy. Like it is literally college baseball, college in general, college itself, life. It's all about what you want out of it. And if you will go get that and you will do the things you need to do to get those, you'll be happy. And what you want is going to change from the time that you're 14 to you're 16 to you're 18 to 25 to 30. Right? I never thought I was going to live in the city of Atlanta with all this freaking traffic. And people are like, well, city of Atlanta sucks. I hate going through it. I'm like, well, you're traveling through it. You're probably traveling through it at lunchtime. And yeah, you know what? It's going to suck a little bit. You want to know what I don't have to do? I don't got to go to the same restaurant every single day when I want to eat food like I did when I was in Iowa. Right? But I went to a college that was 250 kids. I partied my ass off every weekend. But it was only 250 kids, and it was in the middle of West Virginia. Sometimes I was out in the backwoods. We were drinking moonshine, and sometimes we were at some kid's house that went to Marietta. Like, I mean, it's going to be whatever you want to make it. And the same thing with the college process. It's going to be what you make of it from when you're 14. If you go work your butt off, you're going to find a school to play at. And it may end up being the wrong school, and you may have to transfer, or you may not find a school. But you're going to be able to lay your head down at night and look back and say, I did everything I could. I'm happy with the effort. And you're probably going to come out on a winning end, regardless what that looks like.
Yeah, it's to me, it's a question of, all right, what are the inputs,
Thanks for
and
my
then what
TED
is the
talk.
process I work through? Like, did I leave everything out there? Because I think that one of the main things that I have seen from kids in the recruiting process is like, here's the thing, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. If you are going through the recruiting process, you are going to hear no. If you haven't heard no, then you haven't optimized what you can do at the next level because you haven't found your limits, right? You're going to hear no. Some coach is going to say, hey, Max, I like you as a person, but I don't have a spot for you because of 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 reasons. Okay, you're going to hear no. It's always going to be painful and it's going to hurt. But I think that fear of hearing no encourages kids to hold something back in themselves so that they can say, well, yeah, I heard no, but it's only because I didn't do X or Y. It's only because you leave yourself with excuses. And I think to have the courage to be able to not leave yourself those excuses leaves yourself vulnerable, right? You're making yourself vulnerable to hearing no from your dream school. If you then are like, well, it's only because I, you know, didn't want to wake up at 6 and lift and I didn't want to do this or that, that's fine. You have those excuses so you can feel a little bit better on the back end about hearing that no. But I think the courageous thing is to eliminate all those excuses, absolutely maximize and optimize everything that you can, be the best that you can be, and then see where those limits are. You're still going to hear no, even if you maximize and you're the best possible player, student, human you can be. You're still going to hear no, and you won't have those excuses to fall back on to say, well, it's only because I didn't try. But I think that's not what you want to do. If you're looking to do this at the next level, you want to maximize your options by not leaving anything on the table.
I think you said a big word there, and a scary word, vulnerable. And as a society and whatever you want to call it, we are getting better about specifically males talking about mental health and all the things that come with it. And then one of the big key components is being vulnerable in not just recruiting, but in everything. And this doesn't need to be a life coaching session or a therapy session, but through my first marriage and therapy and what I changed was I made myself vulnerable. I allowed myself to hear no. I allowed myself to look in the mirror and say, what do I got to get better at? So instead of saying, coach doesn't play me because he doesn't like me, and that's why I get screwed. Yep. Let's look in the mirror and say, like, okay, well, what's the reality of, why am I not losing weight, Coach Shep? Well, Coach Shep, it's because you're eating McDonald's at 10 o'clock at night, or you're door dashing Taco Bell, and you're not going out and running. Like, that's why you're not losing weight. So that's hard to hear, of course. But if we don't allow ourselves to push the boundaries and be told no and be told like you're not good enough, then you never grow. And that's when, and it's life in general. It's everything. It's you have to be, comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to be vulnerable. Like, it's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay to talk about what you don't do well and how can we improve that. And if you don't have people in your lives that will go down that path with you and say, hey, look, yeah, you're a really good ball player, but you throw 76. Do you get outs at this level? Yes. I don't care if you have a 0.00 ERA when you throw 76 miles an hour as a righty, you're probably not going to get recruited. Maybe it would be very, very difficult. So, like, we need to get you on a program that will increase your velocity because that's your big main thing. And that's going to be hard to hear. And maybe you get on the program and you never throw any harder, but you at least looked at adversity in the face. You looked in the mirror and said, all right, this is what I need to be better at. So, I mean, being vulnerable and stepping out of your boundaries and stepping out of your comfort zone is one of the most important things. And you're never going to get it right the first time. Recruiting is hard. It is literally it's a Plinko board of what works and what doesn't. And this worked for someone else and this didn't work for this person and this, that, and the other. But you just have to keep, just keep swimming, man. Like, keep working out. Keep being a good human. Do your due diligence on research. Again, I push your guys' camps and to wrap this up, kind of, I push Headfirst camps because when I was coaching college, some of the best players and the best human beings and best families we met through Headfirst camps. Headfirst camps, you have to have a certain academic standard to get in them. To go recruit them, you have to have a certain academic standard. So we would find at schools at Oglethorpe that those camps, but that was our, I don't want to say bang for our buck, but like there's a bunch of fish in a small barrel, and we've seen them all, and they fit into our college. Now, why I think what you guys do at Headfirst that makes your camp stand out, aside from you have 80 coaches there, that if I'm a high academic kid, all these schools are high academic. So, like, I may not know which school likes me, or I may not have heard at 3/4 of the list, but I know they check a couple boxes that are really important. You guys do, again, I've got a soft spot for the kid that's not a showcase player. You guys do the showcase in the morning of day one. You get all their metrics, their standing tests, standing jump, their 60s, their arm velocity, and then they get their ground balls. They throw them across, and you got coaches lined up from first base to third base on the outside, sitting in chairs. Everyone goes one at a time, and it's efficient. It's fast. It's a little nerve-wracking, and then you go inside. You get 10 swings inside, whatever it is. All the coaches are on the batting cage, and then you play 2 games that day, and you play 2 games the next day. So you get a chance to showcase, these are my metrics, right? Here's what I can do in a showcase environment, but I'm also going to play a game. So I may not stand out, and coach is going to grade me, and I may hit the piss out of the ball in the game, but then coach looks back and says, it was just average in the cage, but like, I love the way this kid plays. Or coach is like, this kid mashed in the cage. And then you go to the game and it's like, you can't do it anything other than BP. You get a chance to show both. And all of that is top tier, grade A, A+. I know our guys are going to get a chance to showcase themselves. But here's the other thing. Everyone I've met that's associated with Headfirst, from the coaches to the red shirts to the staff that puts it together, even Corey Sparrow, is grade A human beings, and they genuinely care about. They may not know every individual on a human level. They're not going to know every recruit, but they genuinely care. If a kid came to you and asked you for advice, you're going to sit and talk to that kid. You may be like, oh, I'm having this meeting in 20 minutes, bro. Like, can we just save the questions? But you're going to sit and you're going to talk to the kid. It's the same way with the coaches. The Duke guy, poor Chris Gordon, has to sit out there till the cows come home because the line to talk to him is forever long. But he talks to every single kid. You don't get that at every other place. And I think it's the same reason why when I've got a mid-major talent level kid, Wofford's my first call if he can play there, because JJ's incredible. I know that if my guy goes there and we got a guy there that's hitting 3-hole now as a sophomore, he could be the worst kid on the roster, but JJ's going to love Manly the same. He's going to want to develop Manly on the field and off the field the same. And as a recruiting coordinator, that's the best I can do. I can set you up with good people at a good camp to go be with good people for the next 4 years. So that's why I'm always down. I'm just force feeding Headfirst camps to kids, because I genuinely believe they're the best run camps. You get the most for your money, and you get the most exposure. And if you're going to go to a camp, which you absolutely should, you have to go to the Headfirst one. What other ones you want to go to? If Denison likes you and Denison wants you to come to their camp after the Headfirst camp, then yeah, you should, because then you're going to get to play in front of 5 Denison coaches and the whole team, and you see school. But as a starting point, go to Headfirst your junior year, even though you know that you're probably not going to get recruited because you're a D3 kid, but just go for the experience, learn what it's like to sit and shake the hand of a coach, and what he's like to talk to, and what it's like to be out there for 2 straight days on the turf in 90-degree weather, and you're playing with a bunch of random kids that you don't know. Like, go do that. And coaches look how you interact with kids, or your teammates. Coaches look how you interact with your parents. I always tell guys that, like, I may love a kid. If he comes off the field and he's disrespectful to mom, guess what, buddy? You get a black line through your name. And if you get a black line and permanent marker from 90% of coaches, Coach Shep ain't recruiting you, right? And then if I say I like a guy and Bobby Perez from Emory says, nah, Shep, like, mm-mm.
I
Oh,
watched him
well,
make mom carry his bag from the car in the
yeah, like,
not locker
I'm
room
like, oh,
anymore.
you cross that guy off? He's like, I crossed him off. I'm like, all right, well, I love Bobby. I know Bobby's a good dude. Like, if Bobby crossed that guy off, like, I'm definitely crossed that guy off. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just all encompassing. But I think that's what you guys do so well. And, I'll, give you the floor if you want to talk about head first camps and whatever and what they meant to you. Go for it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think that, relationships like this are what we love about the camps too. Obviously, giving student athletes a platform to chase their dream of playing at the next level is what we do. But I think the relationships have a huge part about to a huge piece to play in why we do it. And one thing that we've been kind of like circling around is one of my favorite quotes, and what I think we kind of do at Head First is this whole luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right? This Stoic philosopher Seneca. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. You all are doing the prep. And I think that that's what we're talking about. And the best thing you can do is to keep getting better at baseball, become the best student you can, pursue the right opportunities. All that preparation needs to come through. I think that what our platform is meant to do is limit the role that luck plays in the recruiting process. Does the right coach happen to see me at the right time on the right field? All that. I think that is where recruiting can be a roll the dice, right? Like you talked about your former player who, JJ and Tink came to watch him and he just happened to not have it that day. And that's going to happen.
That's an
And it sucks.
understatement,
And
but yeah.
it's not fun. But how do we limit the role that luck plays? And what we found is that making sure that kids are ready for that opportunity. How do we dial down the anxiety right before they step on the field to showcase in front of all these coaches? How do we make sure that they know what is coming so that they are ready for what's in front of them when the lights are on them? And then also, how do we give them multiple opportunities so that some kids, they're bad at ball velo, their exit velo just that's not their strength. But the way they hit in a game is going to make them stand out. For some kids, it's their overhand throwing velo is going to make them shine. But the way that translates to a game, they haven't quite figured out yet. And so giving players all these different platforms is where I think that helps eliminate luck from the process. Right coach still needs to be watching and see you do something to get your name highlighted, but how many chances can we give that to happen? Like, how many chances can we give a player to get their name highlighted over the course of 2 days? That's what we're trying to maximize. And that's why it's the different formats. It's why it's the showcase and the metrics and the gameplay and the face-to-face meet and greet with the coaches and all the content that we do leading up to camps so that you're ready when you step on those fields. That's a really, really key piece, is limiting luck, because you've done the preparation and this is the right opportunity. So yeah, it looks a lot like luck sometimes that the right coach happened to be on the right field, but you know, true luck has very little to do with it if you've put in the work and you're picking your spots. But I think that's the mission statement behind our campus. How do we give each player a platform to find the right fit, and then also equip them with the tools to be successful for 2 days at our showcase, but then also the tools to be successful through this recruiting process and then in making their college choice? How do we equip them with the tools to be asking the right questions during their recruiting process so that they are finding the right fit and they're happy for 4 years? College it seems like a 4-year decision where you're like, all right, I'm going to be there for 4 years, but it's a lifetime decision because it's a network of people that you're connected with. It's the name that's at the top of your resume for the rest of your life. Like, it's all these things that have lifelong carry through. And so we want to make sure that players are equipped to make the right decision, or at least be asking the right questions through their recruiting, and then also be connected with those coaches. And then also, once they get to that next level, put them in a position where they can be successful because of the way that they've gone through this recruiting process.
Did you get a chance to? You probably didn't. I sent it to you in the middle of the interview. Watch the videos I sent to you. Your text.
I have them. I recognize some of these faces.
Headfirst is definitely something I'm thankful for. When I went it exposed me to a lot of programs and coaches, and really kind of got the ball rolling for me. I had no offers going into that weekend, and I left it knowing I had several schools extremely interested, some offered. And so the way it's formatted, the way it's built, is extremely productive. I went in with several target schools, and I was able to really communicate with them because of the built-in time where we able to talk to coaches, physically go walk up to them and start dialogue. So if done the right way, Headfirst is an extremely beneficial opportunity. I'd take advantage of. It was a hike for me. I'm from Atlanta, and it was up in Long Island. But if you do have the opportunity to go, I would absolutely take it. It's the reason I'm playing college baseball today.
What's up? My name's Dash Edwards. I attended Headfirst in August 2023 up in Long Island. I'm committed right now to play at Vassar College, and I don't think I would be doing that without Headfirst. I knew I always wanted to play college baseball, but it was just a matter of finding that right school, and Headfirst gave me that platform and that almost network to find those schools that I wanted to play for. So like high GPA or high academic schools that still have good D3s programs. And I think Headfirst was just awesome because you meet so many different coaches, so many different people, and it really took a lot of pressure off you because you're being coached by these coaches. You can interact with them during the day, throughout the whole day. While you're playing, you can interact with the coaches that are on your side in your dugout. You can pick their brains about their schools, about baseball, anything. They're really open to conversations. They love it. And so I think that just really made the process a lot easier for me and allowed me to put myself out there and show them what I can do as a baseball player and who I am as a person as well because of those interactions. And I think Headfirst really just helped me find that perfect college, that perfect home for me. So yeah.
I loved Headfirst. It was a great experience for me. I think the interaction with the coaches is really good because I could see not only if they were interested, but if I actually liked the coaches myself. So that interactive ability with the coaches helps out a lot. Figuring out if that school is worth it for you to pursue, or you can even help yourself with getting a college coach's interest, even just by being a good kid. And also just the number of schools there. Like, if you want to go high academic, that's the place to be. So, I would recommend Headfirst to anyone.
When I went, it exposed me
These
to
are
a lot of
incredible.
programs and coaches.
I mean, I can't thank you enough for
Really kind of got the ball
doing that
rolling for
outreach.
me.
That's really thoughtful. Those are
I mean,
fantastic.
I said that this morning to those kids, and those are kids on my 17U team. Last year, one's committed to Harvard, one's committed to Rhodes, and one just committed to Vassar. The kid with crazy hair, Dash, he's going to Vassar. He's the one that I said, like, metrically, he just doesn't do anything that stands out at all. But like, he loves baseball. He's a baller. He's not gonna hit 10 home runs. He's not gonna, steal 100 bags. But like, he's never gonna lose you a game. And
Yep.
the other two, obviously, are twins. I that was a whole process with them too. I thought the kid going to Harvard was going to go to Wofford, and then he took a jump in high school and got posted online, and Harvard then reached out and came down, and I've had great conversations with them. Then he committed there, so that was great. And the twin brother, that one was William. Dad was involved, and that was difficult for me because once Daniel committed to Harvard, it was like Dad was so stressed, and so was I, about like, okay, we got to get William somewhere. Like, he's a left-handed catcher and he pitches. And I always told Dad, like, listen, if we don't find anything in the summer, he's gonna find something at Headfirst. I promise. Like, I truly believe it. I trust it. And then we just need to keep him healthy because he's like injuries after injuries. he went to Headfirst, left, took visits to why am I blanking on the school in Cleveland?
Case Western.
Case Western. He took a visit to another school in Ohio. He took a visit to Denison. Denison needed a catcher, and I'm like, and he also took a visit to Rhodes. And I was like, look, Denison needs a catcher. You're going to play early. They're one of the best teams in the country. I love their coaching staff. Like, this is an example of like, I'm not going to tell a kid where to go, but like, we'll give him our opinion. Of course, I'm pushing Denison hard. Like, we got guys there. He ended up choosing Rhodes, which is ironic because the kid got a concussion the last game when we were playing in Memphis. His parents had left already, and he was with me. And we get in the car to leave, and he is like, he was fine up until he got in the car. We get in the car, he starts like dying. Like, I mean, like he's like having a like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like panic attack times a million. So we end up going to the emergency room, and of course, like, you know, we're trying to talk to mom and dad. I didn't know dad was an anesthesiologist, but he is. I would have been much more like, not honest, but like I would have told him exactly what was going on. But like they're 6 hours away. I didn't want to like ensue panic. And then a couple days later, we found out like the minute when we were in that emergency room was when at a hospital across the street, the doctor was killed. We didn't know that until, when we were discharged, like there was, like we passed a brigade of police. We're like, what the hell? A couple of days later, dad I'm doing the mount, and dad comes up to me and is like, I just want to say thank you so much. Like, and so he ends up choosing Rhodes, which was so ironic that like this big, I mean, brother, I was losing it like I was trying to be like the strong, like it's okay, but like we got his twin brother right there, and he's like Williams like unresponsive, like, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I'm like, oh my god, like it was one of the most difficult times as a coach in that little moment.
Yeah.
I remember walking out of the room finally when our assistant coach came in and just like bawling. It was so much emotion and everything, but that was just, so the fact that he chose Rhodes, which I love Rhodes, don't get me wrong. I love Rob and Jeff. And I'm glad that he went there and had a great time, a great career there. But just that, yeah, man, that was his story. And I thought it was so ironic and crazy that he ended up at Rhodes. But I mean, dude, and I'll go back and get some clips from our podcast that I did with the kids that are currently in school that, they talked about Headfirst, and I'll probably edit them in here at the end of it. But my only hope is if kids aren't, going into their junior year, go to Headfirst, get the experience. Maybe you're good enough and you'll get seen by one of the D1s there, and they'll start the recruiting process. But you can get on some radars for some of the higher academics. You can get those nerves out of the system. You can see how it goes. You know what to expect. And then if something hasn't come along throughout your summer going into your senior year, end of July, man, that's the Headfirst time. That's when people go. I mean, that's when you're going to, if you're good enough and you go there and you don't lay a super egg, like you're going to be fine. And even if you don't play well, like there's coaches that will like your movements, and coaches aren't dumb. They know like, oh, I mean, that kid's good, but he just had a bad week. And, I think you guys keep doing what you're doing, man. Like you offer a great experience for the kids. And from now that I'm on the other side of it, it's so interesting and different. And I know I'm not the first one to be on the other side of it that you guys work with, but I truly do appreciate what you guys offer. And, you talk about relationships. Everything is about relationships. You get jobs because of relationships. And that's another reason why you go play college baseball, because it's about who you know, not what you know. And your network of people, when you go play college baseball for 4 years, like Max Fitchbein talks about Denison, he's like, he said it best, and I can't wait to clip this. when you're in college, you're playing for something bigger. You got all the alumni coming back, all those people coming back, asking you how it's going, all this stuff. You need an internship. You go to Mike Deegan and you say, Diggs, who do you got? And Diggs has got all the Denison alumni, but he also knows everybody from Marietta when he was there. So I got a guy that works here. I got a guy that works there. It's all about relationships. It's why you got to go. You got to go out. You got to step out of the box. You got to meet good people. You got to place yourself in good situations with the right people, and things will fall where they should, and you'll be happy they did. Nobody's going to know that right path for you. Nobody's path is going to be the same. You got to just, it's tough, but you got to just trust it. You got to trust it, and you got to just do it, man. So, Max, I appreciate you coming on today. I have to end it with the lightning round real quick. I'll ask you questions. They don't matter, but they're fun. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
One word answer? Short answer, one word answer?
Whatever your heart feels.
All right.
I've had lightning rounds take 40 seconds. I've had lightning rounds take 15, 20 minutes. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
In between. No, it's a taco.
Oh.
Covered on 3 sides means it's a taco.
Oh, pause, bro.
A burrito's a dumpling.
Oh, whoa. You blew my mind. Gio's going to lose it, bro. Oh, my God. Because he's like, what's the definition of a sandwich? I'm like, a meat between 2 buns. They're like, well, that's a hot dog. I'm like, it's not a sandwich. He's like, it's a sandwich. And you're saying it's a taco. That is.
Taco. You wouldn't call a taco a sandwich. You wouldn't call a burrito a sandwich. A burrito's a dumpling. A Hot Pocket's a burrito.
Oh, my God. You blew my mind. What is your favorite baseball player? Who is your favorite baseball player?
Pedro Martinez, all time.
Favorite MLB ballpark?
Fenway. Has to be Fenway. First.
Yeah,
first
you guys
best.
that say Fenway or the Cubs, like, you ruined my next question of Big Green Monster or Chicago Ivy.
I mean, I'm going Green Monster. But here's the thing. Probably the earliest, clearest memory I have is walking into Fenway as a 5-year-old. My family, we didn't have a lot. We couldn't go to all the games, but we would go probably once a year. And I remember the first time I walked into Fenway, I have never in my life seen grass so green. And it was just like, oh my God. And if you're a fan watching, yeah, it's a terrible experience. Half the seats are facing the wrong way. You're like pointing out towards right field. All the seats are incredibly narrow and not super comfortable. But the holistic experience of Fenway is unbelievable. If you ever have the chance to do it, I cannot recommend it strongly enough.
You have any pregame superstitions?
So many, Shep. It would take the whole lightning round to go through them. I was an incredibly superstitious ball player. Stretch the same way, eat the same thing, arrive at the same time, the exact same pregame routine, ibuprofen, 5-hour energy, all at the exact same time. Everything was timed out before my starts.
So is it superstitions or is it routines?
For me, it was definitely a mix of both. I think that part of it was superstitious, where it was like, I need to do this to be successful. Other parts of it were, this is what I need to do so that when I step on the mound, I'm in the right mindset and I'm ready. And this is what I run through.
Favorite Gatorade flavor?
What's the light? I don't drink a lot of Gatorade. The light blue one.
We don't
chill or whatever.
We don't discuss names. We call them by colors, brother. We are.
Yeah. The light blue.
We are an academic organization led by a non-smart recruiting coordinator. We call them colors, bro. Colors. Favorite sunflower seed flavor?
Ranch, probably David's Ranch.
David's.
Yeah, I like bigs, but I think the price per seed is a little bit too high for my wallet to handle sometimes. And when I'm optimizing,
David is the better. I like David. I mean,
yeah.
Are you pro or anti-shift?
I'm pro shift. I'm pro positionless infield. One of the most interesting conversations I had with Tucker Frawley when he was at Yale was he wanted to move kids around the infield so that they basically didn't have an infield position unless you were a lefty and had to stay at first base.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
You have them practice at all spots.
7 shortstops. I'm going to recruit 7 shortstops and we're going to play the best one where I think the ball's going to go. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, when we were at Oglethorpe, we'd move our infielders, and you'd field balls at every spot, and we'd have a chart on, if you missed a ball, is it to your left? Is it a backhand ball? Is it slow roller? If you made a bad throw, was it when you were doing a 2-step or 4-step? Was it high, low, all that stuff? But we'd move them around all spots because you just see different angles off the ball or off
100%.
the bat. Pitching duel or offensive clinic?
Pitching duel. As a pitcher, that's what I can appreciate more.
I'm gonna know. I know you. I think I would know your answer to this, but do you put pineapple on pizza?
I don't.
Man,
I don't like to yuck too many yums. I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum, and if you like it, great, have at it. It's not the flavor profile that I'm looking for in a pie.
What do you have in a pie then?
I go peppers and onions, or I just go cheese. But peppers and onions are generally what I stick with.
Ugh, I'm so disgusted with you. I mean, are we talking a Philly cheesesteak or a pie? Because peppers and onions.
No, yeah,
I
peppers
will.
and onions on a pizza. Yeah,
I will do banana peppers on a pizza. I do love banana peppers, not with pineapple, but
I'm all about the spice. I think banana peppers. I think you throw some jalapenos on there. All that's additive. I do a lot of hot sauce on pizza. But if I'm paying for toppings, I'm going pepper and onion, and then I'm hot saucing it on my own.
you're so weird.
So I'm told.
Vince Vaughn or Adam Sandler?
I'm going to go Adam Sandler. I think that's a function of my age. I think that whichever one you grew up with, you're probably for that. I'm going Adam Sandler. I'm 35.
I'm 34. I'd say Vince Vaughn. They're both good in their own right. They're just very. It's like me asking you, like, did you like Greg Maddux or Pedro Martinez better? Like, they're very different, but amazing in both rights.
1,000%. I mean, I like, to me, I grew up watching more Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison than I did. Later on, I moved into some of the Vince Vaughn stuff. All good though.
I think
all great stuff.
Vince Vaughn's sense of humor aligns with mine a little bit more.
That's fair.
But anyways, Max, do you got anything to plug? Do you know off the top of your head the dates for the Headfirst camps?
I do. Yeah. So the one that we added this year that is also potentially geographically interesting is July 1st and 2nd in Virginia.
Okay.
So it's a little earlier in the summer, which I know when we're talking about the timing of camps, that's something that's come up. And then also geographically a little bit closer to home, a little bit closer to Atlanta for y'all. So July 1st and 2nd in Fairfax, Virginia. And then our string of 4 camps on Long Island starts up July 29th. So it's July 29th and 30th, July 31st, August 1st, August 2nd and 3rd, August 5th and 6th. All of it is at headfirsthonoroll.com.
Max, today has been wonderful. We went just as long as I thought we would, which is extremely long. Both of us can chat, and I think we both have very different, but the same knowledge and perspective. We've seen it from different sides, but I think at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. And college athletes and high school athletes, and just to have an opportunity. And I, again, have said enough. I mean, I can't say enough how much of an opportunity you guys provide for athletes. And now that I'm on this side of it, I just appreciate it that much more, that my athletes, our athletes, have a chance to go be with you guys for 2 days and be with all those coaches. So, again, thank you for coming on and spending 2 hours on this and, chatting it up with me and sharing your knowledge and sharing your opinions. I mean, I can't thank you guys enough. Even Sully, I appreciate him. He's the best.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's always a pleasure to chop it up with you. I mean, first time it's been recorded, but this is just the latest conversation in this series of conversations.
Again, man, it's relationships, man. We just
100%, and hopefully we keep having them, whether it's
we will,
on a podcast or not.
I'll hopefully see you in New York. I don't know if you'll be there.
I'm gonna TBD.
Okay.
TBD.
I'll see you in New York, buddy. You better be there. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. headfirsthonorrollcamps.com. Is that
Headfirsthonorroll.com.
cut that out? Thank you everybody for tuning in. Headfirsthonorroll.com. Thank you, Max. And if you have any questions regarding Headfirst Camps, you can DM them on Twitter. You can write them an email. You can reach out to me. Again, I'll walk you guys through that process of what to expect, how to sign up. We will get some codes out for the organization to sign up. If you haven't yet, subscribe, like, share, do all that stuff. It helps us just get this information out. And again, at the end of the day, we just want as much information out to not only our families, but all the other families out there that will tune into this, and hopefully they can take something away from it. Until next week, everybody, peace.